we make the direct link in this book between poverty and poor health. There's an inextricable link, an undeniable link rather, between those two issues. And so to see Cal and Dow so out front on this Health Happens Here campaign is something I celebrate with all the other wonderful work that they do. And so this book, The Rich and the Rest of Us, I didn't realize, and I don't think Doc did either, that the title would be so controversial. All over the internet, there's great debate about this divisive title, The Rich and the Rest of Us. And Doc and I don't think it divisive. We think it pretty accurate, actually, of what America looks like. There is the rich and there is the rest of us. When 1 out of 2 Americans, 1 out of 2 of us, and I had to defend this yesterday. Doc and I were in Washington yesterday for Face the Nation, and I made this point yesterday. So Bob Schieffer came to me. He says, Tavis, how, his first question was, Tavis, how bad is it? And I just, thank you, what a layup. So I went right in on that. How bad is it? 1 out of 2 Americans is living in or near poverty, Bob, which means that the issue of poverty in America is now a matter that threatens our democracy. Poverty threatens this democracy as we know it. I went a step further and said, moreover, as we argue in the text, poverty is a matter of national security. Poverty is a matter of national security in this country. I'll leave that now for Dr. West to unpack when he comes up. But that's how we started yesterday. And Bob Schieffer looked at me and said, did you just say 1 out of 2? He said, how do you figure 1 out of 2? And I had to go back, and Doc and I both responded to his question and really explained how this 1 out of 2 is a very real number. It sounds startling. I think what happened was, for all the years that Bob Schieffer, veteran journalist, has been around, to hear somebody look him in the face at his desk, live on TV, and say, yes, you heard me, 1 out of 2, 50%, 150 million Americans in or near poverty. But we're right about it because when you take the perennially poor, or that is to say the persistent poor in this country, the folk who never get talked about, they're always stuck in this situation. We started this poverty tour we took last summer. Last summer, Doc and I got on a bus, went to 11 states, 18 cities, talking about poverty, trying to see what the real face of poverty was in the country. I had a documentary crew with us. That turned into a week-long special on PBS. But we started at Doc's insistence, and I didn't argue, on an Indian reservation. Too often our Native American brothers and sisters left out of the conversation. So we start on a reservation, and I asked them, the camera's rolling, how has the Great Recession impacted you? What say you on the reservation here about the Great Recession? And they said, what recession? You get that, right? It's always this way around these parts, where we live. But you take the persistent poor, who never get talked about, add to them the new poor, who we argue in this text are the former middle class. The new poor are the former middle class in this country. And then you add the near poor, folk, working class folk. That phrase I hate so much, the working poor. I hate that term. If you work, you ought not to be poor. But we say that so easily now, the working poor. You take the perennially poor, you add to that the new poor, the former middle class, you add to that the near poor, you got 150 million people in this country who are wrestling, trying to get out of poverty, or just a paycheck or two away trying to stay out of poverty. My friend Susie Orman, who we quote in this book, says the problem these days is that there is a highway into poverty, a highway in, but not even a sidewalk out. And that's the real problem with poverty in this country. Once you get caught in the clutches of poverty, it's darn near impossible in the land of the American dream to realize a way out, to see a way out. We quote George Carlin, the late great comedian, who once said of the American dream, they call it the American dream because these days you got to be asleep to believe in it. And so I'm all for the American dream like anybody else, but there is part of that dream that doesn't ring so true for so many Americans. And now here we are, 1 out of 2 of us living in or near poverty.